Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's Ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.TV. Thank you guys for tuning in and thank you guys for joining us here on UCY. Make sure you check out all the other awesome hosts on UCY as well, because there's all kinds of different shows going on, different views from all over the spectrum. What I can tell you is that it's not corporate media, so it's at least independent views. And I don't know, you may or may not agree with everything that's said, but at least what can be said is it's not really a corporate agenda. And I thank everybody for tuning into our show, and it's all about you guys helping us grow, because our show's been getting bigger and bigger and more people calling in, and it's awesome to kind of see this thing grow, because when we first started we only had a few viewers and now we've got more and more every show, it seems like, and great callers. Our last show we had a guy from, I think he was in the Marines or something, and he had some great information to get out there. But that's what it's all about. It's about you guys listening to us, sharing our content, our radio show, and make sure you check out, if you ever miss a show, you can check us out either on YouTube at UCY's YouTube channel, or on the website that you're listening at right now, because there's a little archive section there on the left-hand side. And also make sure you guys, when you're not at the computer, you can listen to us on mobile too, because it works through the phone. Just go to the website and it'll play, just like it's playing right now. And I guess that's what it's all about. Tonight we won't be joined by our usual co-host DB, but we are joined tonight by SM Gibson, another one of our awesome co-hosts. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. I guess just checking out all these crazy things. We had on Saturday night we had a party here at the Anti-Media headquarters and had some independent musicians play, and it was a lot of fun. I'm still kind of recovering because it was a wild one, but it was a good time.
The Foreign Sons.
Yeah, the Foreign Sons, and I actually talked to him a little bit about our what we've been talking about as far as incorporating more independent musicians into our movement and into what we're doing with the Anti-Media, and yeah, they were like completely on board. They're down to come on the show, do some interviews. We could play their songs and stuff, so that's some good news. And yeah, if you guys don't know yet, yeah, we want to start expanding into other things besides just news, because it's a lot, the whole movement, the independent media, it's a lot bigger than just news, because media, you got to remember, the media, only a small percentage of it is actually news. If you look at Fox News, for example, in fact, what was it, a year or two ago, they actually split their business up where they said, okay, well, our entertainment arm is going to be one entity, and our news reporting arm is going to be a separate entity. Why? Because their news reporting arm is losing money. It's shrinking because of what the alternative media is doing. But their their entertainment arm is still making a lot of money. So they want to separate those out so that eventually they can either go bankrupt with the news stuff or sell it to somebody else. But then they're still going to have their entertainment arm. So we're making big headway when it comes to the independent media, taking down the corporate media. I posted something last week about CNN. They're laying off 10% of their workforce, which is amazing. I mean, this is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get these people to go out of business. I mean, that's the whole goal, right?
Absolutely.
And then we got New York Times is also laying off like 100 people. So, in that way, we're making big headway and we're having a lot of success. And but I think we also have to keep in mind that the media is much bigger than just news. People listen to music. When music has a message, like in my opinion, it's supposed to have, then it carries a bigger, it carries a whole new angle to spreading the truth. When you can do it through music, when you can do it through entertainment. Look at George Carlin, for example. Look how influential that guy is, even to this day. George Carlin is still one of the most talked about comedians, and he was a completely, anti-establishment.
Look at Russell Brand.
Yeah, exactly.
Bill
He's
Hicks.
a perfect example.
Yeah. Whether you agree with these people or not, they've got their voice out there for the world. I mean, the entertainment industry, whether we like it or not, has a huge influence on the world around us, especially with the youth. So if there's a positive message and an anti-establishment message coming out of that, then, that should be embraced. And whether you agree with those people 100% or not, you're not going to agree with everybody on everything, but you're making progress to get away from the system.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I think it's so important. And just like you were saying with Russell Brand, now I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's a socialist and all this. Maybe he does lean socialistic, but when you see him, he's not. It's not until the host pries him about it when he talks about it. He's not a statist by any means. So I mean, in that way of things, I think that's a good thing. And I'm personally
he came out this week, I believe, and said 9/11 was an inside job too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty big, man. And I mean, but personally, I'm not, per se against socialism as long as it's not a state socialism and a corporate socialism. But I think a lot of these ideas, because if you look at like the activist community, it's very diverse when it comes to political ideas, ideologies, and stuff like that. So we got to understand, if we're going to make headway, well, we're going to have to get along with a lot of people that we may not agree with on everything. But as long as they understand that, the state is the enemy, big government is the enemy, okay, then that is something that we can agree on.
Exactly. Did you hear, speaking of media and entertainment, did you hear the story about, I believe it's Cheryl Atkinson, that the New York Post wrote the story about today, and she has written a book, and she's worked as a reporter for CBS, and she's blowing the whistle on CBS, how they would control her stories, and she was not allowed to say certain things about certain politicians, Obama in particular. Then she was getting some spyware put on her computer and whatever it was, antivirus software, and turns out that her computer had been hacked by some government agency. She wasn't sure who, and that everything on her computer was being monitored by the government.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. That's a pretty crazy story, and it has pretty big implications. I got a few notes on it here that I wanted to talk about, because I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with now. This is the new warfare. It's informational warfare. It's espionage. It's total big brother stuff, So she's an ex-CBS reporter, and basically, I got this news story here. We're going to be covering this for the Anti-Media tomorrow. You should see it on the Anti-Media. But basically, a former CBS reporter who quit the network over claims that her stories were being killed off by the network whenever they were portraying Obama in a negative light. Now, obviously, this probably happened a couple of years ago when before the media flipped its switch and got into elect Republican mode. But she quit because her work was being censored, right?
Right.
Now, she claims that she took her computer to some kind of tech guy, and some kind of like specialist. He was trying to figure out why her computer was messing up or whatever, and he checked it out and he was like, "Oh, he's like, something happened here. It looks like somebody planted this stuff on your computer." And basically, what they were trying to do is what she thinks they were trying to do was plant information on her computer that would have implicated her source. So first of all, they probably hacked it, got her source, and then they threw some stuff on their computer that was basically going to say, "Oh, well, this guy, when he gave you this information, it wasn't illegal, but we're going to make it look like he gave you this information, and therefore then now we can go take him and just throw this guy in prison, just because just because you're asking questions and stuff like that." And she came out and she said, "This is crazy. This is worse than what Nixon even did." And it really is, and it's not. The funny thing is that this isn't getting like any play in the media. Like one big website reported on it. No one else is reporting on this stuff, But tomorrow. This is going to be our top story on the anti-media. Make sure you guys check that out. We're going to try to dig a little deeper and try to figure out exactly what was going on. But to me, I mean, just think about the implications of this stuff and the lengths that the government is willing to do, just because when it's convenient, they want to be able to protect these politicians that they are using as their, I don't know even what to call it. They want to protect their puppets, right? So at times they're going to go through these great lengths to try to implicate people, destroy people's reputations, imprison people that haven't committed any crimes, and then at the very worst level, these corporations like CBS are censoring their reporters. They're not letting them report the truth, and we all know that. That's why the main.
Well, that's why the channel. Amber Lyons was, she quit over the exact same thing. They were censoring her story.
Yeah, exactly, man, and these journalists are getting tired of it, and more and more of them are going to start blowing the whistle now. I think, just like Amber Lyon did, just like this CBS reporter is doing, and this is what we need now. With CNN laying off 300 people, where are they all going to end up working? Guess what? They're probably going to end up working at some kind of internet-based reporting news outlet. And their stories are finally going to be able to get told. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. But how far, how many of these people do you think are legitimately looking to put out the truth, or they've just been so in bed with their corporate bosses that they're just going to continue being a mouthpiece for, whichever politician or corporation that they've been a mouthpiece for these past years? And is it going to help independent media that these people are coming out, or are they going to go, to the Huffington Post or go to whatever website, and it's just going to dilute what people think they're getting on the internet? It could work both ways.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely see where you're coming from. Now we have a caller on from 847 area code. How's it going? You're on the anti-media. Do you want to chime in on what we're talking about here, or do you want to talk about something else?
Yeah, I'm calling in about the fishing license thing.
Oh, yeah. We'll get into that. If you want to stick on the line, we'll get into that in a few minutes. We got a guest that's going to be calling in from the Common Ground movement by the name of Will Brown, and we're going to talk about kind of what that meme is referring to about taxes and because, fishing license and all that stuff, it's kind of a tax in a way. And we're going to jump into that in a few minutes. I want to finish up these other stories real quick before we jump into that. Feel free to chime in whenever you want.
Sure.
And we'll jump into that in a few minutes here.
Good thing.
Now, before we move on, to the next story, I have this other report that kind of ties in with what we were just talking about with this reporter that was being spied on. I mean, this is like Big Brother in action, right? So now there's a report came out today that basically said Putin said that world leaders should be concerned that they could possibly be blackmailed with all this surveillance, the NSA data, Big Brother data. And I got a quote here. There are reports that a number of world leaders are getting undisguisedly blackmailed. It is not without reason that the Big Brother is spending billions of dollars on surveillance around the world, including on their closest allies, Putin said. Putin questioned the justice of such situations. Let's ask ourselves how comfortable and safe it is to live in such a world, how fair and rational this is. Maybe we do not have serious grounds for anxiety, disputes, and asking unpleasant questions.
Well, I was going to add, it's kind of messed up in a way, because it's kind of like, kind of brings a memory back, like, not like a memory, but I mean, it's kind of like showing the past, like police states in the past, like Nazi Germany or, North Korea in a way, like, we're all being spied on in a way, and it totally violates the amendments, totally violates everything.
Exactly, and the thing that it hit me right away when I saw this article today. Now, keep in mind, this is coming from a Russian state-funded media, but still. I've always thought of the NSA as a kind of like Hoover type of organization. Like when Hoover was in charge of the FBI, the main thing he did was he collected information on people, then he used it to blackmail people. In fact, he even tried to blackmail Charlie Chaplin. So this is exactly what the NSA is doing now, and Putin knows it. Putin came out and said it, and we've been talking about it on a show for a while. But if you think about the NSA, and obviously there was a big scandal supposedly when Germany supposedly found out they were being spied on, even though Angela Merkel knew the whole time and she just had to save face. But the German people are very big on security and privacy, so they had to kind of come out in the meeting and say, "Oh, I can't believe this is happening." Quietly, they already knew it was going on, but think about this. If the politicians who, probably have pretty decent security, pretty decent encryption, like Obama even said, oh yeah, I'm not allowed to use an iPhone because the iPhone's not secure or whatever. If they're able to spy on these politicians and use that to blackmail them, just think about what they can do to you. Think about what they just did. Think about what we just found out about the CBS reporter. So they're going to use it against journalists. They're going to blackmail activists. They're going to blackmail anybody that starts making a ruckus or causing a scene or spreading info.
Anybody that seems as
Sibo the rapper earlier today.
Okay, we can kind of tie that in there because all right, there's this guy named Sibo the rapper, and he's a LA musician, and he has been making a bunch of anti-police music and music videos and stuff that have been getting pretty big. They've been going pretty viral. Now, one of the reasons he's doing it is because his cousin recently was killed by the LAPD. And now he's been making these videos for a few months, really good songs, good videos, and now all of a sudden he gets an allegation thrown at him that he stole something. And today he was sentenced, and now he's going to spend at least 4 years in prison. So one can't help but speculate that they probably used some kind of these same tactics that we're talking about that were used against the CBS reporter, these same tactics that Putin is warning us about against this musician / activist. So we're seeing this stuff play out. This stuff that we're talking about, it's literally playing out right now as we speak. And it's a very, very dangerous sentiment. And then we also heard about how the IRS is being weaponized and the IRS is getting thrown at political opponents and stuff like that. So, I mean, this government is completely out of control, man. And they're so insecure that they can't even be honest. They can't honestly prevent crime. They can't honestly do anything. They have to subvert the justice system, subvert the taxation system, subvert all these things because they can no longer beat us in a moral way. They no longer have any moral high ground. They have to do it in a shady way, in a deceiving way, in a way where they lie about it.
Well, yeah, this is like steps becoming like into a police state / almost a fascist state in a way. It's ridiculous. It's horrifying.
Yeah, man. So what we're gonna do is let's go ahead and jump into this fishing licensing, and I'm gonna get Will on the line in a few minutes here. What did you want to talk about with the fishing license meme and all that?
Well, I was just gonna say, it's like you're taxing nature. You're taxing. People have been fishing for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years as a means of like survival, or you're talking about people's sources of income here, in a way, and it's really it's horrifying the fact that you would just like now tax people to do it, like make people get a license, like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and
like,
a guy sitting out on a pier with a fishing pole isn't gonna make a species go extinct. It's these guys out there. These guys out there drag netting and getting a huge sum of fish and killing dolphins and all kinds of crap with their fishing nets and all that stuff. I mean, okay, if they're gonna actually regulate something, do that. I'm not a fan of regulation. I don't really believe in regulation, but for them to stick licenses on kids and people that are just going out fishing to go out and enjoy nature,
yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely ludicrous.
It is. I mean, it's not like we're hunting a dangerous species. It's not like we're killing off populations of fish. It's completely ridiculous. it's
the government's going to go after any source of income they can get. I mean, you talked about that they're taxing nature. Well, think about property taxes. You could have your house paid off for 20 years, and you're still going to be paying property taxes on it.
Oh yeah,
it's just complete theft.
That is true. It's
so
definitely going around.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring Will on the line, and he told me this idea just earlier today that we're gonna talk about. Now, keep in mind, Will Brown. He just started writing for the Anti-Media, and he's put out a few good articles. And he also helps. He's also one of the founding members of the Common Ground movement, which is a kind of movement that is trying to bring people together from all around the spectrum, left, right, middle, whatever. And what we're trying to do now, and he's going to talk about this when he gets on, is we're going to try to launch a tax strike or a tax revolt, a tax protest, so that we can effectively take action against this huge bureaucratic state, whether it's over these crappy regulations like fishing licenses, or over foreign policy, or all these things that we're doing, funding wars, dropping drone strikes, all that crap.
No, exactly. We give $8 billion a year to Israel. Like that tax money could be used for schools, hospitals, better living conditions for the impoverished. Could be used for all sorts of stuff, curing diseases even. That's one example I wanted to put in too.
So I think Will's on the line now. How's it going, man? You there?
Yeah, man. I'm here. Thanks for having me on the show, dude.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being on. Before we go into it, you want to tell our listeners quickly about the Common Ground movement and what you guys are trying to do with that?
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. So basically what the Common Ground movement is, for those who are unaware, it is a decentralized, nonviolent resistance group. And basically, what we focus on is uniting activists and, people from both the left and the right on three things that we feel that every sane person in America should be able to agree on. And one is that we need to end the wars of aggression. Two is that we need to end the surveillance state and the militarization of our police. And three is that we've got to bring some sort of accountability in the political and financial sectors in any way that we can. Obviously, right now, full-on revolution, isn't in the cards. But we are working with, some groups who are trying reform and stuff. So we're going to start at the lowest level, and at every attempt that we're unsuccessful, we kind of increase until eventually we'll end up in, full-on mass civil disobedience, which is what I think will ultimately be necessary to enact some sort of real change in this country.
Excellent, man. Yeah, I don't think that a violent, bloody revolution fighting the state head on would be very successful, especially considering the fact that sooner or later in the next 10, 15 years, there probably will be like no soldiers left. It'll be all drones and robots and stuff like that. There's no more, human beings with a conscience behind the gun. It's going to be a robot doing what it's told. Now, you sent me this idea earlier today, and I really find it to be extremely brilliant. We haven't done anything like this in the U.S. in a long time. Now, people used to do this. In fact, if you look back at right near the founding of the country, there was what was called the Whiskey Rebellion, which is where there was a bunch of these guys that were distilling whiskey, and they were using whiskey as an alternative currency. Up in I think it was in the Steel Belt area, Pennsylvania areas, and West Virginia and places like that, where the government went in. And keep in mind, George Washington was still president at this time, so this kind of sheds light on how quickly this country fell into a tyrannical cycle. I mean, it was pretty much immediately. We had maybe, they founded the country 3 years, 4 years later. They're already trying to impose all these unjust taxes and basically impose violence on people. But you were talking about... What was that?
Oh, I was just agreeing with you. I said, yeah, it's pretty hypocritical.
Yeah, it really is. They supposedly found the country in liberty, and they founded the country out of a tax revolt against Britain, and then they go right away put taxes on people. It's insane. Now, Will, you were telling me, you told me this idea about a tax revolt, and I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think it'll send a message. And everyone says, yeah, vote with your dollars. Now, I think this is the best way we can do it. So what exactly did you have in mind? What were you thinking? And maybe we can get some callers and see what they think about it.
Yeah, for sure, man. First, before I go into that, let me just go into the why. I think it's necessary a little bit before that. And the why is basically, the Common Ground movement idea started, roughly a year and a half ago. And Nick, I know you were involved in some of those beginning conversations with a bunch of us. But ideally, we wanted to get groups set up in every region of the United States and in every state, and then in every major city before we really started rolling out some of the civil disobedience. But as we've seen, for any of us who have been paying attention in the news for the last few years, things are just increasing at an exponential rate, and we have really been able to provide any sort of answer. Last year, we all rallied together, and we were able to push back the war in Syria, and we overwhelmingly said no to that war. And so instead, the media just went on a propaganda campaign for the next year, and obviously they were successful because we're in Syria right now. We're bombing people. We're killing civilians. We're back to our same old tricks. So it's very clear, if you look at the situation, that our government and the media and just about every faction of this government is just not listening to us at any level. And so in order to force them to listen, we need to get something out there that tells the government and the people, okay, we've tried to go this route. We've tried voting. We've tried protests. We've tried boycotts, and none of it's working. And now we're ready to take it a step further. Maybe they'll listen and maybe they won't. But my idea is basically there's a lot of people in the United States that, they don't want to pay taxes. And it has nothing to do with them just not wanting to pay their share or anything like that. For moral reasons, it makes very much sense. I don't want my tax dollars going to killing innocent civilians in any country, whether it's us fighting radical terrorism or us giving the state of Israel billions of dollars a year or, whatever that money may be. I don't want my tax dollars going to it. They're not listening to us. And so what I think people are afraid of is just saying, okay, I'm not going to pay taxes. And then it's just them and, a few others who are already not paying taxes. And then there's a target on their back. They have kids, they have a mortgage, they have, jobs that they care about losing. And so they're not willing to take that risk on their own. So to kind of bypass that initial, reserve of, not wanting to stop paying taxes for fear of retaliation by the state, what we could do is set up on the Common Ground Movement website kind of like a Kickstarter type thing, where there's a ticker or a counter, and basically we set a number. And for the sake of argument, or for the sake of numbers right now, let's just say we say 20 million people, right? And nobody stops paying their taxes until we hit this 20 million people. And at this point, when that 20 million people is reached, we know that all 20 million of us are going to stand together and not pay our taxes at the exact same time. And, if there's just a few hundred of us doing it, the IRS could probably easily, come in, take action, and then that would kill the movement right there. But if we waited until there was 20 million of us, there would be absolutely nothing they could do about it. And it goes back to the old saying, I can't really remember who said it, but let them protest, let them boycott, as long as they continue paying our taxes. That's the only way we're going to reach them right now. And we have to stand together to do it. And if everybody who agrees with the three unifying ideas of the Common Ground Movement, which most people do, I have yet to find anybody who doesn't agree with those three things. If everybody who agrees just clicks a pledge that they will stop paying taxes when the 20 million is reached, I think it's going to send a message, and we might not even have to stop paying taxes if we can get that many people involved.
Yeah, man, that's what I really like about the idea too. Is that there is people here and there that are like, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to pay my taxes, whether it's a right wing person or a left wing person. But what happens to them? The IRS comes in, seizes their bank account, sends them to prison. But they can't do it, like you were saying, they can't do it to 20 million people at the same time. And
exactly.
Another thing that I was...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, yeah, if more people do it, they just can't put everyone in prison. Like, the government is not as powerful as they try to think that, try to convince people that they are,
Yeah, and I think, maybe a couple thousand people, maybe 10,000 people, maybe 100,000 people is manageable. But if we all do it at once at the same year, if there's 20 million of us, even if they had the resources, to find out who we were, where that missing revenue was coming from. And I haven't done the math about what the average U.S. citizen, whether they're middle class, lower class, upper middle class, I haven't done the math as to what the average American, pays in taxes, and then multiply that by 20 million. But I assume that it would be a substantial amount that they would notice. And if for some reason or somehow they were able to track that missing money back to 20 million individuals, they would still need the resources of local departments to enforce whatever action that they planned on taking. And they cannot hold 20 million people in jail, and they just can't. And if they were to decide to take it up a step and say, okay, well, we're going to put you in, re-education or labor camps, not to go too far off into the fringe, that would basically tell us everything we needed to know right there, and then there would be a whole lot more than 20 million people that they'd have to worry about. So that's something that they would have to consider.
SM here. I think that's an absolute brilliant idea. I've had the thought before, but I think it's like you said. Everybody kind of has the fear that I want to take this stand, but they're just going to come after me. And I think collectivizing that way of having 20 million people, it's like you have that to fall back on. And I think it's just a fantastic idea. Even local taxes. With local, I know Nick, San Diego, they do stuff that you don't want your taxes going towards.
Right.
Yeah, and here's one thing that I just thought about too, because if you think about the way the government works, now obviously the government doesn't have the money that they spend. They create money out of thin air, and then they get foreign investment, foreign bond buying, foreign money flowing into the government from China, elsewhere. But you got to think about what is the leverage that when these companies invest or put their money into American bonds, when they send money to our government for our government to spend, what is the leverage? Well, I'll tell you what the leverage is. It's your Social Security number of all 300 million Americans, and it's the future expected tax payments from those 300 million Americans. So if word got out to the global community that there was a huge American tax revolt going on, guess what? Their funds that come from overseas are going to dry up too, because they're going to say, oh, well, we're not going to be able to get paid back if the Americans aren't paying their taxes. We're counting on Americans paying taxes for the next 100 years, because you know what they say. Every child born today is born with like $55,000 in debt. Well, all these countries like China are counting on that child growing up paying taxes his whole life so that the government can eventually pay China back. If word got out that we have this big tax revolt going on, guess what? Not only would they lose their funding from the U.S. Public, they would start losing their funding from overseas as well. And then all they'd be able to count on is the Fed. That would be it.
Right, and
exactly.
Then you could take that a step further if, confidence starts waning in the U.S. dollar, which it already has. I mean, it's the only thing that I think personally that's really keeping us afloat is, we have quantitative easing. Like you said, we have, money flowing in from China and stuff. They're buying up our debt. And then, we have the petrodollar. If for whatever reason these countries decide that we're not going to get paid back on any of our loans, it's time to switch to a new world reserve currency. And, most of the major countries started trading oil and anything but the U.S. dollar. I mean, we're talking severe social economic collapse, and obviously that wouldn't be our goal. But I mean, it's something that the U.S. government would have to look at and say, shit, like these guys, they really could do damage. And if they can't, it sends a message, like you said, Nick, to the foreign debt buyers, is that if the U.S. government can't control 20 million people from paying their taxes now, I mean, what's going to stop them, or what's going to, enable them to collect taxes from the 300 million Americans, in years from now? So that's a really good point, something I hadn't even considered until now.
Yeah, and it would force these guys to the table. It would force them to finally make some concessions. It would start to undermine the entire oligarchy, because that's what America has become. America has become an oligarchy over the past 50 to 100 years. I mean, there's even been studies out of Stanford and various other colleges that look at all of our policy decisions and stuff. And yeah, America is technically an oligarchy. Now, we have this illusion of a republic. We have an illusion of democracy, which unfortunately placates a lot of people, especially the people that are like over 40, and all these people that are planning on voting in the next month or two. Now, I don't want to bash voting too bad. I'm not a huge voter. I think, like what we're talking about now, voting with your dollar is much more effective. But if we're able to be successful with this thing, it would literally force these guys to come to the table. And then we would finally actually see some reform. We'd see at least some kind of reeling in of what's going on, especially with the foreign policy, because that is like one of the most unsustainable spending things that we do. We spend billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, and then also think about the prison industrial complex as well, where we spend all these billions.
Oh my God, I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah, we spend all these billions of dollars incarcerating people over petty crimes and stuff, nonviolent crimes and stuff like that, victimless crimes. That is something that we'd be able to make some concessions with too.
Yeah, and
we have more prisoners than other countries. Like, we have more prisoners than China, which has a way higher population than we do. We have a quarter of the prison population.
Yeah, I think the United States population represents a little more than 1% now of the total world population. But if you look at our prison population, it makes up, according to this year,
at least a quarter.
Makes up more than a quarter, more than 20. It's around 27% of the entire world's prison population. And you're exactly right. We incarcerate more people than China. Which, I mean, start wrapping your mind around that. That's insane. But going back to the idea of the whole tax revolt, is one of the things that the CGM has actually done, or the Common Ground Movement has done, is that we read a book called, or we base a lot of our ideas off of from a book called From Dictatorship to Democracy. And one of the tactics in this book, obviously, it's a book full of tactics to implement in a nonviolent revolution. But one of the things that is key to do in any nonviolent revolution is there's things that are called pillars of power, and what you have to do is use some tactics and identify what their pillars of power are. Is what are the pillars of power that the state or that the tyrannical state is standing on, and what are the actions necessary to start pulling those pillars out from underneath them. And, you know, when you remove one pillar, it's funny how easily those other pillars start to shift and falter. And I think that's what we're talking about doing here is one of their foremost pillars of power is the tax revenue that they get from the citizens. And without it, there is no military-industrial complex, there is no prison-industrial complex, and all these other things that we know keep the state moving like it is. So we yank out this one major pillar of power, and, you know, it's like you said, Nick, it's really funny how quickly they'll come to the table and start having some discussions. And, you know, obviously we won't settle then. You know, we can keep fighting, but it just gives us that, you know, leverage in our corner, so to speak, that we don't have right now.
Exactly.
I'll tell you something else I think this does. Nick, you kind of touched on this. It's going to empower the disenfranchised that are, you know, they feel like it's hopeless to vote. They feel like they're just, you know, you're voting for the same side either way. And think about the millions of people that don't vote because of their disenfranchised and they don't think it matters. Well, those are the people that would be a part of this. And this would really actually take a stand and make a difference.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic idea.
That's a really good point too. And you know, there's some activists who go out and, you know, they might be against the idea. You know, there's not enough people that would do it. But I live in Boise, Idaho. Obviously, that's the capital of my state, but it's a small state. But when you go out and you start talking to people and you just have conversations about the current state of the world, you realize one fact that is really hard to deny unless you've gone out and experienced for yourself, and that's the people are waiting for something. They're ready. They really are, and everybody knows that it's necessary. What the people need is they need something. They just need something to come out and just start getting the ball rolling, and they'll jump onto it. And it's like you said, Congress is at a record low approval rating right now. I don't know what it's at right now because it changes every month. But I've never seen so many people awake to the bipartisan lie. More people than ever want to vote third party, and, you know, that's great. I don't really believe voting third party will make that much of a difference, but it just shows you, like you said, that people are disenfranchised. They're ready for something new. And if we can sweep in and provide them something tangible, you know, that's what people are going to notice. And that's, you know, showing that united front is what's going to bring people towards an idea like this.
Exactly, man. I haven't been so excited about something in a while, and this, you just sent this to me today, and I'm like, dude, this is a great idea. Now,
honestly, you're really one of the first people that, you know, we've talked to outside of our local groups about this. So
now I do want to go into because the funny thing is that the first person I saw call for a tax revolt, and this was about 3 months ago, at least on my Facebook feed, was probably the most liberal guy that is on my Facebook friends list. And he was calling for a tax revolt over the foreign policy and the all these wars and stuff. And now I know a lot of Republican-leaning, conservative-leaning people that are like wanting to not pay taxes because of what the IRS is doing and how the IRS has been weaponized. You know, so I really truly think that this is something that we can really get a broad spectrum of support from. You know, from the left, from the right, and then the majority of people in the U.S. now are in the middle. 40% of all registered voters register as independent now. They actually outnumber Republicans and Democrats individually. So I think that we can get a broad coalition going on this. Everyone's going to have their own reason for doing it, but I think everybody can join in.
Right, and that really ties back in, you know, to the whole, you know, unifying ideas thing. You know, we have that no wars of aggression there, And then, we have the, number 2 is end the surveillance state and the militarization of the police. Well, the conservatives definitely don't like their surveillance state. They don't like the NSA and big government and all that. And then, we have the political and financial sectors there. Obviously, conservatives are more concerned about, the big political system, whereas, people who lean more towards the left are worried more about the financial sector. So really, when you look at, the 3 precepts or unifying ideas or whatever you call them, they're really designed to be, nonpartisan by nature. The no wars of aggression thing is just something that we think should just be common sense. I mean, it's a war of aggression if you go bomb another country unprovoked. I mean, it's just simple. You don't do that shit. It's wrong. And our foreign policy, it hasn't worked. We've been at this type of foreign policy for decades now, and all it's done is lead to more war. The United States has been around longer than 200 years, and we've had, around 20 years of peacetime in that 200 years. People are sick of the war. And this is coming from, whether you're libertarian, whether you're in the middle, whether you're liberal, the whole no war thing, it's just something that everybody is agreeing on. But then also we have, like you said, or like I mentioned earlier, we have the surveillance state and the big government and stuff that we want to bring accountability to. So that's exactly right, is that, what we need to do is stop focusing on, oh, you support gay marriage, I don't support gay marriage, so I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say, and, fuck you, and things like that. Where if we really dial it into what we have in common and, don't pay taxes for your own reasons, whatever those reasons are to you, but, here's what we have in common, let's focus on that and, really show these guys that we're not going to pay our taxes if, you keep screwing with our money and doing shit with it that we don't approve of. You're not listening to us. So
now we have a new caller on the line, and I'm gonna give you a sec to speak in a few minutes. But first, I want to bring up something that I'm seeing right now as a potential hazard that we're going to have to be prepared for. Now, if you look back at, you remember when the government shut down in 2013, there was that big, government shutdown, all this crap. Even though it was kind of all a facade. But what you have to keep in mind is, I don't know if you guys remember, but Obama came out and he had this big press conference and he said, hey, there's no way I can guarantee that Social Security checks are going to come out unless Republicans stop, blocking the government. And then he threatened the veteran entitlements and stuff like that. So one thing that we're going to have to keep in mind and be prepared for is that when we do get this thing going, and I think to get 20 million people, it's going to take us a while. It may take us a year, it may take us 2 years. When we do get it going, you got to remember, these guys are going to come out and the propaganda is going to be flying. The corporate media, of course, is going to be completely on board with the government agenda. They're going to say, oh, it's because of these tax evaders that we're not going to be able to supply welfare benefits. We're not going to be able to supply Social Security to the old people. We're not going to be able to give out food stamps and all this crap. This is the first thing they're going to try to sling at us.
It's going to be complete fear mongering. They're going to call us terrorists, is what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's
I guarantee it.
It's a really good point. Really good point. I mean, I think in order to combat it, I think, we just need to get as much alternative news outlets on this as possible. As soon as we get something tangible up and running and in the works, I know, not to brag or anything, and, Nick, I'm sure you have your contacts as well, but, we know people over at RT, and, we have communications with guys like Ben Swan and stuff like that. So if we set the narrative, before they, really get a chance to pick it up and run with it, that might go a little ways to kind of absorbing the brunt of that blow when, they do start running that propaganda campaign. But I think if we do it right and get enough people contacted up front so that they're aware of what's going on, so that when we launch it, we have enough people in our corner setting the right narrative, the narrative that we want to get out to the people, so it'll really catch them off guard, so to speak. Obviously, it's not going to do everything for us. We're still going to have that, that challenge to overcome. But, I mean, at this point, we have to try. I mean, we just have to.
Exactly, man. And what we need to do is we got to be prepared with all the statistics, all the numbers to say, hey, look, no, these guys don't have to cut welfare. They can cut from where we want them to cut, which would be foreign policy. They can cut from foreign aid. They can stop giving $3 billion to Egypt every year. They can stop giving $8 billion to Israel every year. They can stop giving $2 billion to Pakistan every year. They can stop funding the NSA with who knows how much money the NSA gets. And so this is, these are the kind of things we got to be prepared for. We got to go on the we got to go on the attack more or less. We got to be aggressive with it, and we got to say, oh, they want to cut food stamp, they want to cut Social Security. Well, how about no, because they can cut this instead, and that's what we got to do. We have a caller on the line from 323 area code, and I just want to give you a chance to speak. You're on the Anti-Media Radio. What do you want to talk about?
Hey, this is Alyssa. I'm calling in. Hey, how are y'all?
Pretty good. How's it going? So, Alyssa's been pretty involved down in L.A. with Sibo the rapper. We mentioned it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but I guess we can kind of tie this whole police state into what we were talking about for the big part of the show. And we were talking about we have Will Brown on the show right now from the Common Ground movement. He was talking about starting a tax revolt or like a civil disobedience based on refusing to pay taxes, whether it's because you want to stop the wars, whether it's because you want to stop the militarization of the police, stop the NSA, stop the IRS from being politically weaponized. Now, Alyssa, you've been pretty involved with the SIBO thing, and we talked about this at the beginning, how kind of we talked about this reporter at CBS, how the government was more or less planting stuff on her computer in order to incriminate one of her sources, and how the government is getting so insecure and so aggressive with not only their spying, but now obviously with the militarization of the police. And I kind of wanted to tie that into what's going on with SIBO, because SIBO has been making a bunch of these police accountability music videos, songs about the police and how bad the LAPD is. His cousin got killed by the LAPD. I wanted to know if you were able to kind of tie this all together.
I mean, I'm going to try. I'm sorry, I missed a good portion of it because today was quite a hectic day. I don't know if you told people, but both SIBO and the other defendant, Andrew, they were found guilty on all counts. So we've sort of been processing and reviewing everything. But I think that at the end of the day, this is definitely about a state that has become too brutal. I mean, I don't know how much time people are spending in courthouses, but if you actually go to the courthouse, this is on full display. There wasn't a day in court where we didn't have an attempted detention of someone in the audience by the officers. And it's very, the way that the state behaves and even the way that our courthouses operate, everything is stacked against the defendant. And you realize, at least in the state of California, our inmates, in order for someone to go to jail, it's $60,000 tax dollars a year. Now, for $60,000 tax dollars a year, they should be going to maximum security Harvard. That's not where they're going. And so you realize as you're sitting there, because this particular case was about less than $10,000 worth of goods. And right now, the minimum cost to taxpayers to imprison SIBO in a system that doesn't work, in a case where really there's not any evidence that puts him there except the shade of his skin. Literally, that's what it came down to at the end of this. But for $300,000, you're going to get a ruined human being 4 years from now, and there's really no reparation to the family except revenge. There's nothing that happens here, and the only people that benefit from this, you realize, is you're sitting there. Because the first day of this case, 48 people were getting paid, including your expert witness cops. A lot of them get time and a half to be in court to put these men in jail because it's an investment. It's an investment.
Now, listen, you were there. Tell me if this is true. This is what I heard. I heard that there was no lineup, and that they just had him in handcuffs and brought him in front of the witnesses and say, "Is this the guy?"
Absolutely, that was I had no idea what field IDs were. I mean, I've never ever seen one on television, but as I heard them discussing this in court, and you hear the witness say, "Oh, I ID'd him by the shade of his skin and handcuffs." I'm like, what? Because you would think that there's actually a lineup. But it turns out that a regular practice and something that they do quite frequently is what is called a field ID. So they literally pull somebody back out of the back of a cop car with cuffs on. They read you a little card that says, basically, because you're in this investigative field, none of this should change your mind about identifying this witness. And in good faith, you're supposed to be like, yeah, actually, that's 100% him. And it's a frightening situation. Especially considering, I mean, when you consider everything that's going on, when you consider Ferguson, when you consider the militarization of the police, when you consider the criminalization of people of color, I mean, a field ID is a frightening thing, especially if you're not white, you're brown or black. Because already, by default, SIBO, just in his trial alone, had an 82% chance of being convicted because there was not one black person on his jury. There was an alternate that was black, but there was, of the 12 jurors deciding, not one was black. If you put one black person on his jury, he had a 71% chance of being convicted. That same jury against a white person, that white person has a 61% chance of being convicted. And when you think about it, rationally, logically, knowing that people of color are criminalized, I would think that actually more innocent people are in front of that jury that are of color than of white people, because cops will, for them to actually detain and arrest someone that is white, I think it takes more. Like they're less likely to do it, and we saw that in this court case. I mean, I can't get into the details right now at the moment, but there were a lot of aspects of this court case where you saw these systemic, institutionalized issues play out in real time constantly. With race, with discrimination. I mean, it's real, and it all comes together. And I think that it's the one thing that he really stressed, and I know someone was talking about tax revolt, and he was like, people need to serve on juries. Jury duty is revolutionary, and like everything that they tell you, they try to tell you how to think. And they try to, if you listen to what they're saying from the DA to the judge, everything is to bring you the highest level, bring back a guilty verdict. Because in the end, they keep their jobs. That's what keeps them paid, and their friends. I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, not violent crime. Like, I'm not going to address that at the moment. But, like, I mean, that's what it's about. So, like, by serving on juries and actually using your own critical thought, instead of saying, because they tell you a bunch of lies. They tell you that cops are expert witnesses when cops are known to lie. Can we still call them experts today?
No, and it's kind of like this. It's all part of this prison industrial complex, I think, and I think that's why it's so relevant to this whole tax revolt idea. Because without all this tax money, they won't be able to imprison all these people for very minor crimes, especially the nonviolent stuff. I mean, when you commit a nonviolent crime and then you throw someone in prison, then that person 75% of people that go to prison end up back in prison. And then when you're in prison, you end up making a bunch more connection. I mean, prison makes things worse. Unless it's a violent person that's killed somebody, raped somebody, okay. When it's a nonviolent crime, prison makes things worse. And what I wanted to know, and we only have about half a minute here left, do you think that SIBO is being charged with this politically? Is it like a Hoover type of move? Where because he was criticizing the LAPD, because his songs, his music videos were going viral against the LAPD, is that why they put this charge against him?
I don't know if that is why that charge is against him. I think this is something that existed. However, I do think that could have played a role in the way his actual court case played out, because almost every person, with the exception of me, was locked out of that courtroom. And I was the only, by the end, I was the last person standing, and by coincidence, by all appearances, a white woman. So, like, every other person that had come to his case, and the cops were very aggressive. I don't want to get into the full details of it, but, like, there was definite indications that there was constant tension that were related to politics there. So it's not that it didn't play a role.
Yo, here we go. through the stereo.